When I transmigrated into the novel world, the original owner had just swallowed sleeping pills. Her young daughter was still sleeping peacefully in her arms, while her husband, whom she loved but couldn't have, had been out all night, drinking with his old flame who had returned from abroad. I took over the original owner's body. The oblivious male lead wanted me to continue being his on-call nanny. My overbearing mother-in-law was making a fuss about wanting me to divorce her son. The male lead's old flame was also eager for me to step aside for her. I became a mother without hesitation, holding the young daughter, and decided to make everyone who had hurt the original owner pay the price. Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. As I opened my eyes, my head felt heavy and foggy. I could barely breathe and felt nauseous. In my arms, a cherubic little girl slept peacefully, her tiny hand clutching my blouse tightly as she breathed steadily. On the bedside table, an empty bottle of sleeping pills lay on its side. I grabbed my mobile from beside the pillow and dialed 999. When I regained consciousness, the pungent smell of disinfectant filled my nostrils. Fortunately, she was brought in time. The patient is now out of danger, a voice with the doctor's authority said gravely. As her family, you must pay attention to the mental state of someone with depression to prevent any further suicide attempts. Another man's voice, deeper in tone, replied, I understand, doctor. Thank you for your help. The door opened and then closed again. I opened my eyes to see a face clouded with worry. It was Joel Lockwood, the husband for whom the original owner of this body had an unrequited love. Where's Myra? My voice was still hoarse. Joel looked over when he heard me speak. Seeing I was awake, he suddenly became angry. You're asking about Myra now? Did you think about her when you were swallowing those sleeping pills? Violet Martin, how old are you to be playing these suicide games? I looked at him calmly and beckoned him closer. Joel, thinking I had something to say, sat down on the chair by the hospital bed with a frown. What is it? Come closer. Joel seemed impatient, but seeing my pale face, he leaned in reluctantly. I raised my hand and, with all the strength I could muster, gave him a resounding slap across the face. Have you gone mad? Joel exclaimed in disbelief, a clear handprint blooming on his cheek. I glared at him coldly. What right do you have to criticize me? When you were out drinking all night for Nicole Chambers, did you think about Myra and me? I called you so many times, told you I was feeling awful. What did you say? The night before, Joel had been at a welcome-back party for Nicole Chambers, catching up with his old flame. Nicole had used Joel's phone to send Violet an intimate photo of herself and Joel. In the picture, Joel was holding a glass, his smile hazy with alcohol. Nicole was clinging to his waist, nestled against him like a love bird. Violet, already suffering from depression due to Joel's long-term emotional neglect, had completely broken down upon seeing the photo. She had called Joel in tears, finally getting through after more than a dozen attempts. Joel had listened to her sobs with cold indifference and annoyance. He had said, Violet Martin, if you want to die, just get on with it. No one's going to stop you. Joel's face darkened as he pressed his lips together, trying to justify himself. I thought you were using take your own life to blackmail me. I didn't expect. Didn't expect what? I interrupted him. You didn't expect what Nicole would do with your phone. Or did you just want to humiliate me through Nicole but didn't think I'd actually attempt to take my own life? Joel despised Violet. He despised this woman who was as humble as dust, with her heart and eyes full of nothing but him. 3 years into their marriage, he had countless affairs, always coming home smelling of other women's perfume. If it weren't for the child, he might have brought those women home. Joel found a peculiar pleasure in this blatant infidelity, testing Violet's limits without hesitation, forcing her to retreat again and again. He didn't care if Violet was hurt or upset, she would always compromise. Faced with my questioning, Joel was at a loss for words. I looked at him with contempt. Joel Lockwood, you should be grateful I'm still alive. Otherwise, you'd be on your knees wailing at the funeral home right now. My words infuriated Joel, his eyes reddening with anger. Violet, haven't you had enough? It's just one photo, is it really worth all this drama? What more do you want? If you hadn't taken advantage of me when I was drunk back then, I would never have. Years ago, the Lockwood family suddenly fell on hard times. Joel Lockwood went from being a pampered son of a wealthy family to a penniless debtor overnight. His girlfriend of many years, Nicole Chambers, who was about to marry him, abandoned him and left the country at this time. All that was left was his father, who had jumped to his death, his sick mother, a bankrupt company, and his shattered self. Violet Martin had secretly loved him for years and didn't give up on him even when he was at his lowest. She unhesitatingly emptied her savings to help Joel rebuild his business. The night they signed their first £1 million contract, they both got drunk in celebration and ended up in bed together. After that night, Violet became pregnant. Joel didn't love her but had to marry her for the child's sake. He blamed everything on Violet, coldly watching her feel guilty and suffer. Constantly holding back in this dysfunctional marriage, denying herself day after day. "Are you saying I forced you? Did I pour the drinks down your throat, or did I take your trousers off?" I retorted. Joel's expression froze. In the past, whenever he brought up the beginning of their marriage, Violet would always back down. This tactic had never failed before. He hadn't expected his usually meek and silent wife to confront him so fiercely. Ignoring him, I pushed open the window of the hospital room and shouted, "Joel Lockwood, CEO of Lockwood Group, has been raped." It was lunchtime, and the area below the hospital ward was bustling with people. My shout startled a few sparrows from the tree branches. Joel yanked me back, shocked and angry. "Have you gone mad?" I shook off his hand. "If you believe I raped you, you can file a lawsuit against me. Don't be shy, you're the victim. The law and the public will be on your side." Joel's face turned ashen with anger. Muttering ridiculous under his breath, he stormed off. I was glad for the peace and quiet. I took out my phone and ordered lunch for myself. Just as I finished eating, another delivery arrived. The order was under Mr. Lockwood. I gave this delivery to the delivery boy, who thanked me politely. This belated lunch, like Joel's delayed affection after Violet's death, held no meaning for me, or for original Violet Martin. After my afternoon nap, another uninvited guest entered my hospital room. Nicole Chambers strutted in on her stilettos, exuding an air of superiority. Crying, making a scene, or threatening self-harm won't win back a man's heart. "Violet, I advise you to be sensible and agree to the divorce. Dragging this out won't do you any good." I lazily lifted my eyelids to look at her. "Miss Chambers, if I remember correctly, I'm married to Joel, not you. If anyone wants to end this marriage, it should be him coming to me directly." Nicole glared at me. "Violet, don't play dumb with me. Joel doesn't love you at all. Now that I'm back, your divorce is inevitable." "Oh," I calmly gazed at her, "then why hasn't Joel brought up divorce to me? Is it because he doesn't want to?" Nicole became furious. "Violet, stop flattering yourself. If you hadn't taken advantage of my absence abroad, I would be Mrs. Lockwood now." I casually picked up an apple from the table and took a bite. "Miss Chambers, one shouldn't be too greedy. When the Lockwood family fell on hard times, you left without a backward glance. Now that your rich boyfriend abroad has dumped you, and your mother, who was the mistress, has been kicked out, you're rushing back because Joel is wealthy again. Also, Miss Chambers, in romance novels, characters like you who challenge the rightful wife are called disposable female supporting roles. They usually don't end up well. In fact, in the original story, Joel did blame Nicole for Violet's death and launched a series of crazy revenge plots against her. Nicole ended up with nothing in the end. You're talking nonsense. I'll tear your mouth apart." Nicole lost it and raised her hand to slap me. I threw the half-eaten apple at her. Thud. The apple hit Nicole's forehead. Another thud as the apple bounced off Nicole's forehead and hit Joel, who was just entering the room. Double kill. I raised an eyebrow. "Well, you've got perfect timing." Joel glared at me while holding his forehead. "Violet, what madness are you up to now?" Nicole clung to his sleeve, looking pitiful. "I just wanted to check on her. I didn't expect her to be so angry." "Joel, please explain to your wife that yesterday was all a misunderstanding. That photo, I meant to send it to myself, but I accidentally." I scoffed, interrupting her. "What's this? Is your contact name in Joel's phone also starts with V? What does it stand for? Vermin? Nicole screamed, Joel, look at her. I immediately took out my phone and started live streaming. Hello everyone, this is an exclusive broadcast of Lockwood Group CEO Joel Lockwood storms hospital room with mistress to force out wife. Give the host a follow with those money-making little hands of yours. Joel couldn't take it anymore. Violet Martin, what nonsense are you spouting? Nicole lunged forward to grab my phone, forcibly ending the live stream. The last frame froze on Nicole's contorted, furious face. The brief live stream, lasting less than 7 seconds, topped the trending topics that night. Hashtags featuring Joel Lockwood and Nicole Chambers' names flooded the internet. Late at night, Joel hung up the phone and entered the room with a weary expression. He pulled up a chair and sat down beside my hospital bed. All this fuss over one photo. Haven't you had enough yet? He asked. I had my eyes closed, but opened them upon hearing his words. It's not just about that photo. It was about the countless betrayals and compromises over 1,095 days and nights, which had crystallized in that moment, crushing Violet's fragile psychological defenses like a mountain. And Joel's words were the final straw that broke her. Violet died of a broken heart. Even now, Joel was still asking if I'd had enough. He hadn't heard me clearly and frowned, asking, "What?" I said, "Get out." Joel grew angry and said irritably, "Can't you speak properly? When I tried to speak properly with you, you treated me like an enemy and told me to get as far away as possible. Now that I don't want to deal with you anymore, you suddenly want to talk properly." I said calmly, turning to look at him. "Joel Lockwood, how pathetic are you?" Joel took a deep breath. "Do you think you're the only one who's been suffering in this marriage? If it weren't for the child, I would never have married a woman I didn't love." So he had trampled on Violet's genuine feelings as punishment for her. But what had Violet done wrong? "You were the one who proposed marriage to me," I reminded him. "Joel, I never asked you to take responsibility for me." After that night, Joel and Violet maintained an adult understanding, tacitly pretending nothing had happened. Violet knew Joel didn't love her, and she didn't force it. Until Violet discovered she was pregnant. She was an orphan, longing for a blood relative of her own. So she decided to keep the child. Later, Joel found out too, and she anxiously awaited his call. "Let's get married," he said. I looked at this hypocritical and selfish man before me, not understanding why Violet had loved him. "Your pain isn't caused by me, it's your own fault, yet you take it out on me. You want to be the responsible good man in the eyes of society, while mourning your lost love with those other women. You blame me for obstructing your love with Nicole, but she went abroad, not to a funeral. You had countless chances to rekindle things with her. You don't blame yourself or her, you just blame me. You're not only foolish, you disgust me. But none of that matters now." Joel's face flushed red, but before he could speak, he heard me say, "As long as you don't flaunt yourself and your flings in front of me and Myra, you can do whatever you want with all your old and new lovers." Violet loved Joel, and love inherently gives the beloved one the power to hurt the one who give love. But I am not original Violet Martin. Joel is not granted the power to hurt me. Joel had always fancied long, straight hair, and Violet had maintained this style for years. The first thing I did after being discharged from the hospital was to go to the hairdressers and get a perm like the Little Mermaid's big waves. During my hospital stay, Myra had been sent to Joel's mother. Now that I was out, it was only natural that I should bring her back. As soon as Joel's mother saw me, she frowned. "What a flashy mess. How inappropriate." Mrs. Lockwood had always looked down on Violet because of her background. Years ago, when Lockwood Group went bankrupt, Joel's father took his own life. Unable to bear the shock, Mrs. Lockwood fell ill. Joel, that useless lad, would only numb himself with alcohol when faced with problems he couldn't solve. He'd get drunk every day, while Violet helped handle Mr. Lockwood's funeral arrangements, and took on the burden of caring for Mrs. Lockwood. Having lived a life of luxury for years, Mrs. Lockwood maintained her upper-class airs even after falling on hard times. She demanded freshly squeezed juice and sliced fruit. Violet was at her beck and call 24 hours a day like a maid, attending to Mrs. Lockwood until she was discharged. Violet herself lost several pounds from exhaustion. But even this couldn't earn her a kind word from Mrs. Lockwood. A patient in the same ward asked her mother. "That young lady who comes every day, she's your son's girlfriend, isn't she?" "So diligent." Mrs. Lockwood poked at the apple on her plate with a toothpick and replied indifferently. "She's the caregiver my son hired." Later, when Violet married Joel, his mother found fault with everything. In short, Mrs. Lockwood believed Violet wasn't good enough for her precious son. Violet's depression was partly due to Mrs. Lockwood's constant torment. Yet for Joel's sake, Violet humbly endured no matter how difficult his mother was. "But I wasn't going to put up with it. I'm young and beautiful, and people enjoy looking at me when I'm dressed up. Should I wait until I'm old and withered like you before I bother to make an effort?" Mrs. Lockwood hadn't expected me to dare mock her. Her lightly made-up face contorted. "No parents means no manners. How dare you talk back to your elders?" Mrs. Lockwood loved beauty and had been a beauty in her youth. Sadly, her beauty had faded, leaving her looking rather unpleasant. With the slightest grimace, her foundation sank deep into her wrinkles. It was quite a grotesque sight. I smiled carelessly and said, "I'd get more appreciation giving money to a beggar. I've poured my heart out for you all these years, and you still treat me like an enemy. Clearly, manners, like character, improve with good company." Mrs. Lockwood's chest heaved with anger as she pointed at me. You. How could my son marry such a thing? Count your blessings." I watched her lose her composure with satisfaction. "After all, I'm your family's savior. If it weren't for my kindness and lending a hand back then, how could you be standing here putting on airs? Perhaps it would have been you without parents instead of me." Ignoring the old woman's ashen face, I strode towards the escalator. Myra was napping in the small room upstairs. I carefully picked her up and carried her downstairs. Mrs. Lockwood blocked the main door. "You can't take Myra away." I hardened my expression. "I am Myra's mother. You have no right to stop me." She snorted. "What kind of education can Myra get with a mother like you? We can't let you ruin another child of the Lockwood family." Myra whimpered and shifted on my shoulder. I patted her back soothingly and said to Mrs. Lockwood, "If you can't understand civilized language, I'm also familiar with less refined methods." Mrs. Lockwood was shocked. "You wouldn't dare lay a hand on me." I raised an eyebrow. "Shall we find out?" Mrs. Lockwood cowered, trembling as she took out her phone. "I can't control you anymore. I'll tell Joel to divorce you right now." I walked past her, carrying my Myra away. Myra woke up and was both surprised and delighted to see me. She followed me around like a little shadow, never straying far from my side. "Mummy, you're so beautiful, like the Little Mermaid princess," she exclaimed. I happily kissed her little cheeks and played with her for a while before tying on an apron to start preparing dinner. Myra, being well-behaved, quietly brought her little stool and sat at the kitchen door, watching me intently with her chin resting on her hands. Finding her behavior odd, I asked, "Myra, why are you staring at Mummy?" "I'm afraid if I blink, Mummy will disappear again for days," she replied. Since her birth, she had never been separated from me for so long. In the original story, after witnessing Violet's body, Myra had fallen seriously ill. I hugged her small body tightly, feeling a pang in my heart. Mummy promises to be by Myra's side every day from now on. Only then did the little girl's worry turn to joy. After dinner, Myra played with her toys in the living room while I washed the dishes in the kitchen. Joel came home and, seeing Myra absorbed in her toy world, turned and entered the kitchen. He was taken aback when he saw my flamboyant red curls. "Violet?" I couldn't be bothered to turn around. "Spit it out if you have something to say." The air was silent for a moment before Joel's voice, tinged with annoyance, broke through. "I heard you almost came to blows with Mom." "Violet, do you have any respect for your elders at all?" I focused on scrubbing the grease off a plate. Age alone doesn't give one the right to demand respect. Wisdom and virtue are what make a person worthy of reverence. Joel wasn't unaware of his mother's attitude towards me, but he never stood up for me. "Mom's your elder. Can't you just put up with it, no matter how difficult she is?" Joel said, grabbing my arm and pulling me towards the door. "You're going to take Myra to apologize to Mom right now." I shook off his hand and threw my soap-covered rubber gloves in his face. The washing-up liquid foam smeared all over his face, making him look quite a mess. I can barely tolerate you, let alone your mother, I snapped. I quickly left the kitchen, picked up Myra, and went upstairs to give her a bath. After the bath, it was time for the usual bedtime story. Myra pulled out a copy of The Little Mermaid from a pile of fairy tale picture books. "Mummy, I want to hear about the Little Mermaid princess." I opened the book and began to softly narrate the story. Suddenly, her sisters appeared. To save their little sister, they made a deal with the sea witch. The sea witch took their long hair and gave them a sharp knife in return. If the Little Mermaid stabbed the prince in the chest with the knife, she would turn back into a mermaid and return to the sea. The Little Mermaid held the knife and, without hesitation, plunged it into the prince's heart. She returned to the sea and lived happily ever after. Myra, who had been drowsy, suddenly perked up. "Mummy, you read it wrong. The Little Mermaid turned into sea foam." I stroked her soft hair. "Does Myra want the Little Mermaid to turn into sea foam?" Myra shook her head. She never tired of the Little Mermaid story. But every time we read about the Little Mermaid turning into sea foam, Myra would cry. Clearly, she couldn't accept this ending either. I told her, if a relationship only brings you pain, you should stop sacrificing yourself and end it immediately. Only by truly loving yourself will you not be obsessed with someone else's love. Similarly, I looked down into Myra's innocent eyes. If you don't like the ending of a story, you should rewrite it yourself. Myra was too young to understand such profound concepts. But I hoped to plant a small seed in her heart, one named Love Yourself. After tucking Myra into bed, I tiptoed out of the room. Back in the bedroom, Joel was waiting for me. He spoke in his usual commanding tone. "Tomorrow, go and dye your hair back. You know I don't like it." "I love it, and Myra says it's pretty too." "What does your liking it have to do with me?" Joel's face darkened. "Do you have to go against everyone? Today as well, Mom was worried about you just getting out of hospital and not having rested properly. She wanted to help look after Myra for a few more days, and you nearly came to blows with her." "She was worried about me?" I couldn't help but laugh. "When your mom was in hospital that winter and demanded watermelon, where was her concern when she berated me after I trudged through 3 streets in the snow and couldn't find any? When I was pregnant with Myra and you drank yourself into a gastric bleed while entertaining clients? Where was her concern when she slapped me in the hospital and called me useless for not taking care of my own husband? I'm afraid of pain and wanted an epidural during childbirth. Your mom said every woman goes through it and stopped you from signing the consent form. Where was her concern when she listened to me screaming in agony? And now you're telling me she's worried about me?" "Joel Lockwood, you can be blind if you want, but I can see clearly." I gathered my pillow and duvet and headed for the door. Joel reached out to stop me. "Where are you going?" "The guest room," I shook him off. "Sharing a bed with you makes me sick." But suddenly, his expression softened, and he clutched his stomach as if in pain. "Violet, my stomach hurts." He was trying to use weakness to soften my heart. This trick had always worked easily on original Violet before. She would bring him tea, give him medicine, and then make him a bowl of Scotch broth. With a fried egg on top, soft yolk and all. But this time, he was disappointed. I stood still, unmoved. "Why don't you just die from the pain then?" He stared at me in shock, his face turning pale as cold sweat dripped down his forehead. The pain was real, not an act. But he didn't know that it wasn't his stomach that was hurting. It was his liver. Years of excessive alcohol intake had already caused changes in his liver. Joel searched my expression, trying to find a trace of concern. But I just stared back at him coldly, his pale face reflected clearly in my pupils. He finally realized that I truly didn't care. Just as he hadn't cared about Violet crying on the phone that night. His Adam's apple bobbed as he instinctively tried to say something, "Violet." Just then, the phone rang. It was Nicole. He frowned and hung up, but she persistently called back. Joel looked at me, hesitating. I gave a cold laugh and turned to leave. The next morning, Joel came downstairs with dark circles under his eyes, just as Myra and I had finished our breakfast. Joel glanced at the extra plate on the table, his eyes flickering. He leisurely pulled out a chair and sat down, taking a sip of milk. He seemed to be in a good mood. Although I usually prefer black coffee in the morning, milk isn't bad either. I was wiping Myra's mouth with a napkin when I heard this. I replied coolly, "You can tell Elsie about your preferences yourself." Joel paused, confused. Elsie? A middle-aged woman in a housekeeper's uniform came out of the kitchen and said to me, "Ma'am, I've finished tidying up the kitchen." I nodded, "Thank you, just come back on time this afternoon." After Elsie left, Joel frowned at me. I don't like having strangers in the house. Joel was someone who valued his privacy immensely. In the past, Violet had always taken care of everything in the house herself. But if money couldn't be used to improve the quality of life, then wealth would be meaningless. I wasn't about to wait on him. "You can choose to move out, or take care of all the housework yourself." I ignored Joel's sour expression and took Myra out to the nursery. Children don't understand the complexities of adult relationships. In the car, Myra asked me, "Mummy, why did Daddy look unhappy?" I casually turned the steering wheel, "Maybe he doesn't like milk." But it didn't matter whether he liked it or not. Joel eventually had to accept the fact that there was now an outsider in the house. When Joel's call came in the evening, I was having dinner with Myra at the garden restaurant. "Where are you? Why aren't you at home?" I could almost imagine his expression as he said this, frowning, his facial features tense, cold and hard. He was used to having a light on at home waiting for him at any time. Now that light was out, and he was starting to feel uncomfortable. "Joel, I have no obligation to wait for you at home 24 hours a day. Nor do I have any obligation to report my whereabouts to you." There was silence on the other end of the phone for a moment. Perhaps he also remembered how impatient he used to be when Violet asked if he would be home for dinner. "Violet, aren't you tired of this? Don't you have a life of your own besides watching my every move? Do I need to report everything I do to you?" Just as I was about to hang up, Joel finally spoke, "I'm hungry. Elsie prepared dinner. But it's cold now. Can't you heat it up yourself?" Joel paused, then spoke again, his tone stiff, "I want to eat something you've made. Take it or leave it." I hung up the phone. On countless nights waiting for Joel to come home, Violet had always reheated the dishes over and over again. Most of the time, she ended up waiting in vain, facing the cold leftovers alone. I wonder if Joel could now feel even a fraction of what Violet had felt back then. When Myra and I returned home, Joel had already left. The food on the dining table remained untouched. After showering and putting Myra to bed, I heard noises from downstairs. Nicole was supporting Joel as they entered. He appeared to be quite drunk. Nicole struggled to help Joel onto the sofa, then conveniently fell into his arms. Joel, in his drunken haze, tugged at his tie and complained of thirst. Nicole poured him a glass of water and held it to his lips. Joel took a sip, then frowned and pushed it away. "Not water, I want hangover soup." Nicole lost her grip on the glass, spilling water on both of them. "Where am I supposed to get hangover soup from?" she grumbled. Nicole furrowed her brow, then leaned in to coax him. "Look, your clothes are all wet. Let me help you change, or you'll catch a chill." It was the height of summer, a few drops of water were hardly cause for concern. I watched coldly as Nicole reached for Joel's collar, unbuttoning his shirt. Joel suddenly grabbed her hand. Nicole blushed, her voice coy, "Joel." But in the next moment, Joel called out softly, "Violet." Nicole's eyes widened in disbelief. "What did you call me?" "Violet." Joel repeated the name with longing, making me feel nauseated. Nicole was furious. "Joel, look carefully." "I'm Nicole." "Nicole?" Joel frowned, shaking his head as if trying to clear his vision. He then pushed Nicole away and stumbled to his feet. Nicole grabbed him. "Where are you going?" Joel shook her off. "I need to find Violet." Nicole, both anxious and angry, tried to stop him again. "You can't go." "What's so great about Violet Martin? When are you going to divorce her?" To her surprise, Joel flew into a rage at these words. He violently pushed Nicole away. "No divorce. I won't divorce her." Nicole fell to the floor, frustrated but helpless. She threw a cushion from the sofa to the ground in a fit of pique, then ran off wiping her tears. Joel wandered around the room calling Violet's name, tripping over furniture and unable to get up. Lying on the floor, he whined about a headache like a child throwing a tantrum for sweets. The air remained silent, with no one to answer. Joel could only curl up, hugging his stomach and muttering, "Violet, my stomach hurts." In his subconscious, he still believed Violet would make him hangover soup as she used to when he drank too much. Then she would let him rest his head on her lap, gently rubbing his stomach until he felt better. I ignored him and returned to the bedroom. I slept soundly through the night. It wasn't until the next morning that I learned Joel was ill. He had spent the night lying on the cold floor, and Elsie only discovered him when she came to prepare breakfast. He had caught a chill and developed a high fever, yet stubbornly refused to see a doctor. Elsie made some porridge and brought it to him, but she was sent away. "Mrs. Lockwood, please try to persuade Mr. Lockwood. How can he recover if he doesn't eat or drink anything?" Elsie didn't understand, but I knew clearly that he was doing this deliberately for me to see. I entered the room with the tray. Joel had his back to me, his voice sounding very impatient. "I said I don't want to eat. Daddy, Mommy will be angry if you don't listen." Myra stood with her hands on her hips, looking fierce. Joel was startled. He turned around and instinctively tensed up when he saw me. I ignored him and put the tray on the bedside table. Myra ran forward and handed him the glass. "Daddy, take your medicine." Joel couldn't put on airs in front of his daughter. He sat up, leaning against the headboard, took the medicine, and then frowned at the gruel in the bowl. "Is this all you're giving me to eat?" I folded my arms. "Take it or leave it." Joel glared at me. Seeing that I wouldn't budge, he reluctantly picked up the bowl and sipped the gruel. After just one taste, he frowned and put the bowl aside disdainfully. "It's tasteless." I took Myra's hand and turned to leave. "If you have any complaints, you can tell Elsie." "Where are you going?" he called out behind me. Myra answered for me, "Mummy's taking me to nursery." "Daddy, be good at home." When I returned after dropping Myra off, Joel was still at home. Though he was ill, work couldn't be neglected. His assistant had brought documents for him to sign and looked surprised when she saw me. She then greeted me politely, "Ms. Martin." Violet had helped establish Joel's company from the ground up, and she held shares in it. But only this assistant of Joel's would address her as Ms. Martin. Hearing the voice, Joel knew I was back. He peered through the half-open door. "Violet, I'm thirsty." His commanding tone, as if I were his housekeeper? I ignored him and went to my room to change clothes. When I came out again, Joel was waiting at the door. "Where are you going now?" He grabbed my hand. He had just recovered from his fever, his lips were pale, and his body was still very weak. I easily freed myself from his grip, twirling the car keys on my finger, going out. Joel glared at me. "I'm sick." "You're not staying home to look after me?" I laughed. "You don't seem to understand. Even if you had broken arms and legs, it wouldn't be my concern, let alone just a cold and fever. Unless you die, then I might graciously consider arranging your funeral." As I left the garage, I ran into Joel's assistant, who was about to leave with some documents. I remembered her name was Nancy. She had seen how Violet used to fawn over Joel meekly, and was one of the few people willing to show kindness to Violet amidst the mockery and derision. "Ms. Martin, you've changed a lot," she said with a smile, her gaze falling on my vibrant red curls, which looked even more striking in the sunlight. "Nothing stays the same forever." I waved goodbye and sped away in my car. The days of waiting to inherit Joel's estate were undoubtedly joyous, especially with my bank card brimming with seemingly endless funds. I had booked a full-body spa treatment, and as I emerged, I ran into someone. "Mrs. Lockwood?" A woman with an innocent, flower-like appearance looked at me with surprise. "It really is you. I almost didn't recognize you." She gave me a thorough once-over, unable to hide her envy. The woman quickly rolled her eyes and said scornfully, "No matter how you dress up, Mr. Lockwood's heart will never be yours." I smiled gently. Well, if it isn't my husband's fifth mistress." This woman was one of Joel's lovers, once quite favored by him. He had spoiled her to the point where she lost all sense of propriety. even brazenly coming to our home to provoke me, declaring that Violet should step aside for her. Later, when Joel found new companionship, he gradually neglected her, and she finally quieted down for a while. Who would have thought I'd run into her today by chance? I had spoken softly earlier, just loud enough for everyone present to hear. The spa was bustling with people, and suddenly many turned to look. The woman's face turned red. What nonsense are you talking about? What fifth mistress? I looked at her with pity. You can't even reach the status of a mistress. You're worse at being a lover than others. Fifth mistress, I truly pity you. Amidst the snickers from onlookers and the woman's furious gaze that could kill, I casually put on my sunglasses and sauntered away. Next to the spa was a newly opened cafe with a serene ambience. I sat by the window and ordered afternoon tea. A group of young men, looking like university students, came over, jostling each other. One of them, wearing a white t-shirt and jeans, was pushed forward by his friends. He stood in front of me, blushing. Miss, may I buy you a coffee? Youth is indeed charming, one glance is enough to please the eye. I smiled lightly. Why don't you invite your friends over? I'll treat you all to afternoon tea. When Myra and I arrived home, Elsie had already prepared dinner. Joel was sitting at the dining table, his face dark as a thundercloud. I couldn't be bothered to care about what had upset him this time. Elsie had made her specialty fish and chips, which Myra loved. She was still young and hadn't learned how to remove the bones properly. Fearing she might choke, I focused on carefully removing the bones for her. Suddenly, I heard a fit of coughing. I looked up to see Joel covering his mouth, his face red from coughing. Myra's love for fish was inherited from Joel, who also didn't know how to eat fish properly. When he ate fish, it was always Violet Martin who helped remove the bones. I only glanced at him for a moment before looking away. Joel slammed his fork down on the table and stormed upstairs without a word. After Myra fell asleep, Joel waited outside the door. I need to talk to you. I walked past him straight to the guest room. We have nothing to discuss. But you have plenty to say to that pretty boy, don't you? He held his phone up in front of me, displaying a photo. It was a candid shot of me smiling brightly at a young man. Joel gritted his teeth, his face stormy. You're out all hours. Are you fooling around with him? I laughed coldly, finding it absurd. Projecting much? One innocent photo and your mind goes straight to the gutter. Joel, do you think everyone's as filthy as you? That a single glance means jumping into bed with strangers? My words stung him. Red-eyed, he pinned me against the wall. You call me filthy? Aren't you? I stared him down, prying his fingers off my shoulder one by one. How many women have touched you? Too many to count? Men with no self-respect are like rotten cabbages. Joel, you disgust me. Fine. Very well. Joel laughed bitterly, suddenly twisting my arms behind me. His knee forced between my legs as he kissed me roughly. It was a brutal kiss. I couldn't avoid it, so I bit down hard. The taste of blood filled my mouth as Joel released me with a pained gasp. I broke free of his grip and slapped him with all my strength. Joel's head snapped to the side, his fist clenching and unclenching. You hate me, don't you? He asked softly. Hate him? That question was better directed at Violet. As for me, I didn't have such strong feelings about him. I just wished he would die. Joel got no response. He looked at me, words dying on his lips. I pushed past him, vigorously wiping my mouth where he had kissed me. After that night, Joel's attitude towards me grew cold. Though we lived under the same roof, we were like strangers. I was glad for the peace and quiet. Some time passed. One afternoon, I went to pick up Myra from nursery as usual. But the teacher told me Myra had already been collected by her grandmother. Remembering how Joel's mother had tried to stop me taking Myra home before, I frowned and drove to her house. Joel's mother was sitting on the sofa drinking tea. When she saw me looking for Myra, she slammed her teacup down on the table. You're acting like I've kidnapped her. I'm Myra's grandmother. Can't I spend time with my granddaughter without your permission? I sat on the sofa opposite her. No one's stopping you from seeing her. But you should at least inform me, her mother, before taking her away without a word. Joel's mother snorted. Who do you think you are? I don't need your approval to see my granddaughter. I nodded. Actually, you do. I'm Myra's legal guardian. Without my consent, you have no right to even see her. Joel's mother's hands shook with anger. Don't think I don't know your game. You trapped my son into marriage with that baby, and now you're using her to avoid divorce. Let me tell you, Myra doesn't lack for mother figures. I sensed a hidden meaning in her words. Suddenly I realized that in all this time, I hadn't seen or heard Myra. My face hardened. Where is Myra? Joel's mother looked smug. I sent her out with Nicole. For a moment, I saw red. It was unbelievable. You took my daughter and left her with your son's mistress? Joel's mother slammed the table. What mistress? Joel will divorce you soon enough. Then Nicole will be Myra's new mommy. It's good for her future to bond now. You don't get a say. I laughed bitterly. My relationship with Joel is none of your business. Though since Joel's father died young, perhaps he's already found your son a new mummy down there. I turned to leave, the sound of shattering the cup and curses following me out. I took out my phone to call Joel, but received a call from the hospital instead. Myra had nearly drowned. When I arrived at the hospital, Nicole was standing outside the ward, crying her eyes out to Joel. It's all my fault for not watching Myra properly. I told her the lakeside was dangerous, but she was too playful. I took my eyes off her for a moment and she just... Nicole's words trailed off as she caught sight of me approaching furiously. Frightened, she hid behind Joel. Joel tried to block me. Violet, please calm down. I raised my hand and slapped him hard across the face. Taking advantage of Joel's momentary shock, I grabbed Nicole by the hair, yanking her out from behind him, and then slapped her forcefully. You're good at shirking responsibility, aren't you? Taking advantage of the fact that Myra can't speak up while lying in the hospital bed. You're quick to absolve yourself of any blame. Nicole, stung by my slap but unable to retaliate with Joel present, clung to his sleeve, sobbing. Joel, I really didn't think Myra would fall in. Joel, recovering from the shock, his face red from the slap, said, Myra falling into the water was an accident. You can't just lash out without. Smack! I slapped him again. Joel Lockwood, that's your daughter lying in that hospital bed. Your mistress was the only one present when it happened. Accident or not, how can Nicole be free from responsibility? I warned you not to let your mistress interfere with Myra and me. But not only did she conspire with your treacherous mother to take Myra behind my back, she also let my daughter have an accident right under her nose. Joel, you can't control your mother, you can't control your mistress, you're utterly useless. Feeling nauseated at the sight of these two, I turned and entered the ward. Myra was still unconscious, lying in the hospital bed. Her little face was pale, her lips colorless. The doctor said Myra was not in serious danger, just unconscious from the shock. I kept vigil by her bedside for a long time before Myra finally stirred. Seeing me, she threw her arms around my neck, sobbing uncontrollably. Mommy! Myra doesn't want a new mummy. The sea witch is bad. Myra was so scared. I quickly comforted her, and after some questioning, I learned the whole story from Myra. Nicole had not only spoken ill of me to Myra but also hinted that she would become Myra's new mummy. Myra got angry and called her the sea witch. Nicole, humiliated and enraged, pushed Myra. As a result, Myra fell into the park's artificial lake. I immediately called the police. Nicole hadn't left yet. She was sitting with Joel on a bench in the hospital corridor, the mark of my hand still visible on her face. Seeing me, she lowered her head apologetically. I know you don't want to see me, but I'm worried about Myra. I cut her off, worried she'll expose you? Nicole's head snapped up, her expression panicked. What nonsense are you? She suddenly fell silent, looking terrified at the police officers approaching from the end of the corridor. I watched coldly from above. Save whatever you have to say for the police. As the police led Nicole away, she kept crying about how wrong she was. There were no eyewitnesses at the scene, and the words of a 3-year-old couldn't be used as evidence. Nicole sat in the police station's interrogation room, adamantly refusing to admit she had pushed Myra into the water. But the police found CCTV footage from a corner of the park. The footage clearly showed Nicole pushing Myra into the lake. I instructed my lawyer to file attempted murder charges against Nicole Chambers. Nicole was detained and tearfully begged to see Joel one last time. Joel refused to see her. He came to me instead, his face full of guilt. "I'm so sorry, Violet. I never imagined she would do something like this. I was busy arranging Myra's hospital discharge. You owe an apology to Myra too. She suffered this ordeal because of you as her father." Joel pressed his lips together uncomfortably, unable to deny it. "I didn't handle things well. Do what you need to with Nicole's case. I won't interfere." I reminded him, "Don't forget your mother was involved too. I don't want her anywhere near Myra again." "Can you ensure that?" Joel fell silent, then nodded after a long pause. "All right, I promise." I don't know what Joel said to his mother, but she did stop showing up to bother Myra and me. Joel, on the other hand, became the new bother. He cut ties with other women and canceled all unnecessary social engagements, becoming the reformed prodigal son returning to family life, like in those domestic dramas. He started taking Myra to and from nursery school, setting aside work to play games with her and read bedtime stories. Myra was almost shocked by his transformation. Joel had rarely spent time with her before, always busy with work. A father's involvement is crucial for a young child's development. I didn't want my issues with Joel to impact Myra's healthy growth. Besides, Joel didn't have much time left. Each moment with Myra was precious. So I didn't interfere with their father-daughter bonding. But Joel misinterpreted my attitude as acceptance of him. While spending time with Myra, he repeatedly tried to win me over, impulsively buying me flowers on his way home from work. But after 3 years of marriage, he didn't even know Violet was allergic to pollen. I wasn't delighted as he'd hoped. Those beautiful, vibrant flowers ended up in the rubbish bin outside, thrown away by Joel himself. Watching me finally stop sneezing, Joel's eager anticipation turned to helplessness. "I'm sorry." Whether he was apologizing for triggering my allergies or for years of neglecting Violet, I couldn't tell. I just frowned, disgust in my eyes. "Stop doing these nonsensical things." His good intentions had backfired. Looking hurt, he said, "I just wanted to make it up to you." "There's no need." I poured myself a glass of water. "I won't stop you from playing the role of a good father to Myra. But I hope you'll cease this useless, self-indulgent effort. It's cheap." My words were harsh. Joel's face cycled through shades of red and white. A bouquet of flowers couldn't erase the pain he'd caused Violet. I had no interest in playing along with his reconciliation fantasy. I turned to leave, but Joel grabbed my arm, his expression suddenly furious. "You've taken off your wedding ring?" I'd removed that ring before leaving the hospital, but Joel only noticed now. I found it laughable. "I don't like it." "Is there a problem with taking it off?" Joel's expression froze. These were the exact words he'd used when confronted by Violet's questions. Joel and Violet had only registered their marriage, without a ceremony. Even the wedding rings were bought by Violet herself. Joel had never worn his. But for Violet, that ring was her only symbol of identity in this marriage, carefully guarding her dignity as Mrs. Lockwood. I stared at Joel's speechless face, feeling a surge of satisfaction. "Joel, I'm simply treating you the way you've always treated me." "Is it really so unbearable?" His fingers tightened around my wrist, his eyes pleading, "I regret it, Violet." "Can we start over?" "Sure," I said. I pulled my hand free, smiling carelessly. "You go die first, then I'll consider starting over with you." "How about it?" "Are you willing to die?" I've always been a reasonable person. The real Violet Martin had already died, so it would only be fair for Joel Lockwood to die once too. People only realize the value of something after they've lost it. There's truth in that statement. Joel tried everything to win me back, but my heart remained as hard as stone. Finally, when he realized that no matter what he did, he couldn't rekindle Violet's feelings for him, Joel broke down. Time hadn't matured him, he was still that useless man who resorted to alcohol to numb himself when faced with problems he couldn't solve. Joel drank himself into a stupor and knocked on my door, repeatedly demanding to know why I wouldn't love him again. I feared he would wake Myra, who was sleeping soundly. A drunken father could become an indelible childhood trauma for her. I opened the door and looked down at Joel, who was kneeling on the ground. "Take a good look at yourself, Joel Lockwood. What is there about you worth loving?" Joel looked up at me, the stubble on his chin giving him a haggard appearance. His white shirt was stained with alcohol, crumpled and hanging loosely on his body. His tie had been carelessly loosened and hung crookedly at his collar. Joel looked shabby and unkempt, a far cry from his once impeccable appearance. I couldn't hide my disgust as I looked at him, as if I was staring at a pile of rotten rubbish. But as Joel looked up at me, a spark ignited in his gradually focusing eyes. He grabbed my ankle like a drowning man clinging to a piece of driftwood. "Violet, forgive me. I swear I'll never make you unhappy again. Didn't you always regret that we never had a proper wedding? I've contacted that wedding dress designer you love so much. Let's have a wedding ceremony, shall we? In Bali, sun, sand, balloons, and bonfires, just like you've always dreamed." So he knew. He knew all of Violet's regrets and hopes. I kicked him away. "Your promises are as worthless as you are. You're both rubbish in my eyes." Joel's eyes reddened, unable to accept this. "You used to love me so much," I sneered, "so you know it's in the past? Now I only regret how blind I was to have ever fancied you." "I don't believe it." He laughed and cried, "No matter how much I hurt you before, you always forgave me. Violet, you loved me so much, how could you possibly not want me anymore?" Suddenly, a thought struck him, and he froze, staring at me rigidly. "Is there someone else?" I couldn't stand it anymore. I put my foot on his chest. "Not everyone is as rotten as you. I don't love you anymore, I don't want you anymore. Can't you understand that?" But Joel seemed relieved, muttering to himself as if in self-deception. "As long as you haven't fallen for someone else, that's good. If you haven't fallen for someone else, I still have a chance." Not wanting to waste any more words on him, I turned to close the door. But Joel grabbed my wrist and pulled me down to the ground. He had just been crying, his eyes were wet and bloodshot. Can you let me hold you?" His burning kisses fell on my neck as he greedily inhaled my scent. The strong smell of alcohol filled my nostrils, making me feel slightly nauseous. Joel ignored my resistance and tried to slide his hand under my skirt. I haven't had a good night's sleep in so long. When I close my eyes, all I see is you. Violet, I'm so afraid of losing you." My hand had already grasped the empty bottle on the ground. I aimed it at his head and smashed it down hard. Blood splattered onto my face as I kicked Joel off me. Still not satisfied, I kicked him a few more times. "You scumbag!" After venting my anger, I went back to my room to call 999 on my phone. By the time Joel was discharged from the hospital, I had already moved out with Myra. Joel couldn't reach me and was frantically trying to find my whereabouts. As a result, he got into a car accident and was sent back to the hospital. He broke 3 ribs and was diagnosed with late-stage liver cancer. He had less than 6 months to live. Joel's mother called me in tears, cursing me as a jinx and a wretch woman, then begging me to visit Joel in the hospital. I was busy taking Myra on holiday, enjoying the sun and sand in Bali. After returning to England, I went to the hospital alone to see Joel. Chemotherapy had made him lose all his hair. He wore a woolen hat, looking pale and frail. My red hair, in contrast, was still vibrant and eye-catching. Joel was happy to see me, his eyes welling up with tears. He asked cautiously, "Now that you're back, will you stay?" I sat by his hospital bed, with a half-smile. "Do you still think that I'll forgive you because you're about to die, and then accompany you to the end of your life?" He remained silent, looking at me full of hope. "That won't happen." "I won't forgive you," I stared into his eyes, enunciating each word. "Joel Lockwood, I'm waiting for you to die so I can inherit your estate." The hope in his eyes shattered piece by piece, and the light faded from his gaze. After Joel's death, his mother came to see me. She was dissatisfied with the distribution of Joel's estate, believing that I had embezzled her son's inheritance. She threatened to sue me. I told her the company was co-founded by Joel and me before our marriage. Apart from that, Joel had nothing before we married. The car, house, savings, and other property are all marital assets. Now that he's dead, according to inheritance law, this is all you get. Oh, and I've found a buyer for the house you're living in now. Please move out within a week. Joel's mother was shocked. On what grounds? I smiled, on the grounds that I'm the actual investor, and the house is in my name. Joel's mother left, crestfallen. I inherited Joel's shares, which, combined with what I already owned, made me the largest shareholder of Lockwood Group, or rather, Martin Group as it should now be called. But I didn't immediately take over the company. Instead, I hired a professional manager to run it temporarily. At the same time, I decided to study abroad, pursuing a degree in finance and business administration, to prepare for taking over the company in the future. Before leaving the country, Joel's proxy lawyer handed me a letter written by Joel before his death. I didn't open it, instead throwing it straight into the bin. The people and things of the past should stay in the past. My child and I are heading towards a new life.